Oh, that's so hot. Oh, it burns. That was delicious. Welcome back. This isn't the best filming setup, but it's what we're going to do right now. It's a cold and cloudy day in Maine, and I just want to talk about books. So that's what we're going to do. So for this week's video, I want to do a 2025 book wrap-up. I originally wanted to do my book breakdowns based off of each season, but that's a lot of work to do, and like editing and also reading, and sometimes I go through reading slumps where I don't read for a couple months. So now I understand why all of the other girlies do it this way, so this is how I'm going to do it. I know I already did some sort of book wrap-up for 2025. This is my end of the year wrap-up for 2025, if that makes sense. With all of that said, grab a nice warm drink, grab a nice snack, and let's get into it. So the first book that I read was The Mystery Guest. This is by Nita Prose. This is a mystery thriller, and I gave it 4 stars. Trigger warning for this book, there is unaliving. This book in one sentence: don't judge a book by its cover. Before I get into the synopsis, if you hear noises, it's Albus. For The Mystery Guest, we return to the Regency Grand, where Molly and her friends are hosting a book conference for a well-loved mystery author and all of his adoring fans. When this esteemed author is found unalived, who is to blame? The maid? So my thoughts on this book, I really enjoyed it. I did think that it was gonna be copy and paste of her first book, but it wasn't. It was similar, but it was also kind of different, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed learning about Molly and her grandmother. Overall, it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if she has a third one. I honestly haven't looked, but I would read it. Moving on. The next book was The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is by Susan Collins, or Suzanne. It's a dystopian fiction book, and I rated it 5 stars. Trigger warning for this book, it does have violence, abuse, and unalivings. This book in one sentence: who is the real enemy? Okay, so in The Hunger Games, we follow Katniss Everdeen, who volunteers to take her younger sister's place in the 71st annual Hunger Games. We witness Katniss as she uses her wit and skills to survive each trial and outsmart the Capitol and the game makers. I originally picked up this series because I haven't read it. And everyone was talking about her newest book that she came out, and I felt out of the loop a little bit. Had a little FOMO. So I decided to pick it up, and I don't know why I didn't read it before. It is YA, but it's also really good YA, and the underlining theme was magnifique. It was one of those books that I had emotions through it. I had good, bad. Like, I like a book that really makes me feel. Overall, though, I really enjoyed it, and I do think I will be reading the other books in the series. The next book that I read was The Help. The Help is by Catherine Stockett. It is a historical fiction, and I rated it 4.5 stars. Trigger warnings for this book: it does have racism, DV, and child loss. This book in one sentence: maybe we aren't so different after all. In The Help, we follow Abilene, I don't know if that's right, Minnie, Skeeter, an unlikely group of friends who come together to tell the truth of what it's really like to be a black maid in Mississippi. Overall, I would say, though, I really enjoyed this book. I do understand the controversy around it. I did cringe at the white savior complex notes that other people called out, for sure. However, I did, for the most part, enjoy it. I don't have the wherewithal to break down everything that was wrong with it, so I can only just speak from how I felt. Wherewithal, I don't know if that's the right word. Anyways, so the next book that I read was Scythe. Scythe is by Neil. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, girl. I'm so sorry. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. This is a dystopian science fiction, and it is 4 stars. Trigger warning for this book: it does have violence and unalivings. This book in one sentence: what makes us human? In this book, we are in a world where we have conquered unhappiness and disease, but we still cannot escape death. Therefore, we have created the Scythedom, I don't know if I said that right. However, we follow Citra and Rowan, who become apprentices and learn the art of unaliving. After many trials, they begin to question their humanity. I don't know what accent just came out of me. My overall thoughts on this book, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it a lot. I don't know if I enjoyed it enough to read the rest of the books because the ending really felt flat for me. This is the first book that I've ever read from this author, so I don't know what his writing style is, but his romance to me felt a little bit rushed and a little bit flat. It was kind of hard to connect with it. And like I said before, the ending was really flat. I felt like I was just starting to connect to the characters, and the ending was rushed. My lipstick's fading because I'm drinking hot chocolate and everyone's gonna deal with it. Okay, so the next book was The Impossible Life. The Impossible Life is by Matt Haig. This is a literary fiction, and I rated it 3.5 stars. Trigger warnings for this book, it does have death and grief. This book in one sentence, if the girl from the movie Lucy was a sweet old lady. In this book, we follow Grace, who receives a gift in the form of a house from a friend from long ago. She decides to visit this house because she's left with a lot of questions. So she buys a one-way ticket to Ibiza, where she expects to find answers, but finds something else instead. This is my second book by this author, and I was not disappointed. It is itself, the story is really silly. It's creative though, and I found myself having fun, and that's all I can really ask for. So I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was All Your Racial Problems Will End Soon. This is by Charles Johnson. This is a graphic novel, and I rated it 5 stars. Trigger warning for this book, it does contain racism. This book is a collection of Charles Johnson's cartoons that he has done throughout his life, and they were just really interesting to read and look at. They were super cute, but they were also a little deep, but also some of them went over my head and I didn't fully understand it. But it was cool to see what the media was like at that time. So I really enjoyed it. I encourage anybody who would be interested to read it because it was really cool. The next book that I read was also a Matt Haig book. I just like saying it that way, I'm sorry. The book was How to Stop Time. It is a historical fiction and a romance. I rated it 2.5 stars. Trigger warnings for this book, it does have death and violence. This book in one sentence. What is the meaning of life? So, in this book, we follow Tom, who has a rare condition that slows his aging. All his life, Tom has been looking for the missing piece in his life. Love. That one thing he cannot have. This book is labeled as a historical fiction, which is honestly surprising to me because we went back in time for the memories, but that was about it. The book itself didn't really feel a whole lot of historical fiction to me, but obviously I know nothing. So other than that, the book itself felt really flat. I couldn't really connect with the characters or the story. I would still read one of his other books because I've read a couple and I have enjoyed them, but this one just wasn't it for me. We had to take a quick intermission. I do apologize. Also, the light is changing because the sun went down because I decided to film this late. That's on me. I do apologize. So the next book that I read was The Talk. The Talk is by Darren Bell. This is a novel, biography, but also a graphic novel. And I rated this one a 4 stars. Trigger warning for this book, it does have racism and violence. In this book, we learn what it was like for Darren growing up. We learn about the conversations that he had not only with himself, but the people around him and his family about being Black and being different. My overall thoughts for this book, I really enjoyed it. The art was awesome. As a mixed person, I related to his stories quite a bit. It was cool to hear his perspective on just life and living and existing. That's about it. I don't really have anything bad to say. It was just a cool read. The next book that I read was Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is by Brandon Sanderson. This is a fantasy, and I rated it 3.5 stars. Trigger warnings, it does have violence and unaliving. This book in one sentence, what would you do for love? In this book, when Tress's love goes missing, she must face impossible odds to save her love, making impossible friends along the way. I really like Sanderson. I've read a couple of his other books as well, One thing I really like about him is his story building as well as his world building. He does take a while. You're not going to get to like your climax until like 70% of the way through, which is fine for me if it's worth it. For this book, I really enjoyed how quickly and how much I felt for Tress and Charlie and their relationship and rooting for them. It was just a really fun story, and I'd recommend it. The next book that I read was The Body in the Bookstore. This is by Ellie Alexander. This is a mystery and a fiction. And I rated it 3 stars. Trigger warning for this book, it does have violence and unalivings. This book in one sentence, you remember that degree that you don't use? Time to pull it out. In this book, we follow Annie as she tries to save her favorite bookshop with a mystery book festival. Everything goes perfectly until the body was found in the bookshop. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't the best thing I've ever read. It was a really fun read. It was super creative. That's pretty much it. It was fine, but I had fun. So the next book that I read was The Bone Season. The Bone Season is by Samantha Shannon. This is a dystopian fiction. This is a 3.5 stars to me. Trigger warnings for this book, it does have violence and unaliving. This book in one sentence, like ACOTAR, but with witches and no Tamlin. In this book, we follow Paige. Paige is a clairvoyant who works in the criminal underground. Her power, breaking into people's minds and stealing information. One night, she is kidnapped and taken into an underground city where she becomes a prisoner. We experience Paige fighting for her freedom and making life-changing friends along the way. I enjoyed this book. It definitely had the ACOTAR toucher and bad things will happen vibe, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed her relationship building a lot, whether it was romantic or platonic. It was super witchy, which I'm all about. So 10 out of 10. The next book that I read was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a historical fiction and a romance, and I rated it 5 stars. Trigger warning for this book, it does have grief and DV. This book in one sentence, what would you do for love? In this book, we follow Evelyn Hugo, who is a Hollywood bombshell with a scandalous past. When Monique is given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to interview said bombshell, she must accept. What Monique doesn't expect is not only to understand, but relate with said bombshell. I have heard quite a few book girlies talking about this book, so I decided to pick it up. And I went in with no expectations, and I was not disappointed at all. It was a beautiful book. The Hollywood glamour, the mess of it all, it was just, I loved it. Another one that she wrote is Daisy Jones and the Six that everyone really likes. I might try that one, I don't know, but this one I loved and have been recommending to all of my friends. So the next book that I read was House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom. This is by Sherry Frankie. This is a biography, and I rated it 5 stars. Trigger warning, this does have abuse in it. In this book, we learn about Sherry and her life living under her narcissistic mother. We follow Sherry as she gains a sense of freedom, and we just listen to her share her story. My heart really goes out to Sherry and her family for everything that they went through, and going through it publicly. I can't imagine how traumatizing that was, but I was interested in the story and I did want to learn more, so I'm glad that I chose to hear it from her. That's all I really have to say. I think any book, most books where people are sharing their story, especially something so hard, are good. So the next book that I read was The Inheritance by Nora Roberts. This is a thriller, and I rated it 2.5 stars. Trigger warning, this does have death and grief. This book in one sentence, life be crazy, and there's ghosts. When Sonia agrees to take over a house in Maine that her long-lost uncle left to her, she discovers a startling family history, and even a family curse. And it's up to Sonia to break that curse and avenge all who have come before her. I did not really enjoy this book. Yeah, I feel quite disappointed. Not a whole lot happened in this book. There wasn't a whole lot of plot building. It was extremely repetitive. I thought one thing was going to happen, that thing happened, but it happened not the way that I thought it was going to happen. Overall, it was pretty bland. I walked away being more of like, what the heck did I just read? I enjoyed her character building, but that was pretty much it. Sorry, Mom. The next book that I read was The Society of Unknowable Objects. This is by Garth Brown. This is a fiction and a fantasy, and I rated it a tree. Trigger warnings. This does have violence and unaliving. This book in one sentence. Cute, but a little all over the place. In this book, we learn about the Society of Unknowable Objects. We learn about how they are formed and what to do when you find one. It was a cute story, not super memorable. I remember being mostly confused because I thought we were someplace and then we were not that in that place anymore. So I didn't know what was happening. By the end, though, it was okay. It was a cute story, but that's about it. The next book that I read was The Covenant of Water. This is by Abraham Verghese. This is a historical fiction, and I rated it 2.5 stars. Trigger warning, pretty much every trigger out there: death, unaliving, child loss, medical trauma. It's all there. This book in one sentence: generational trauma be trauma-ing. In this book, however, we follow multiple generations of a family in the south of India as they try to break their generational curse. I unknowingly picked up another one of his books in my $2 book haul. I hopefully am gonna like it. I didn't care for this one too much. His writing style is extremely pretty. It's very detailed. You really fall into it. It's very beautifully written. And then you think about like what he is writing, and then I just cringe a little bit. I don't think that we should be marrying children, and I don't think we should be writing about having intimacy with basically children. 18 is still a child to me, sorry. Outside of that, I really enjoyed his world building. I really enjoyed his character building on top of that, and the relationships between the characters. It was just some of those things that really made me uncomfortable. Maybe it was my own trauma, I don't know. But that's my thoughts on it. Maybe I'll like the other one, maybe I won't. We'll find out. Now we're going to move to the books that I did not finish of 2025. The first book that I did not finish was The Valkyrie's Daughter. This is by Tiana Warner. This is a fantasy, and I stopped reading it 10% of the way through. I think I would have really enjoyed this book when I was a kid. Unfortunately, I did not really like reading as a kid like I do now because I didn't really care for this book. It felt very immature, like too immature, where I was starting to get just a little uncomfortable, like, why am I here? The next book that I didn't finish was The Mountain in the Sea. This is by Ray Naylor, I think is how you pronounce that. This is a science fiction, and I stopped reading this 20% of the way through. I initially picked this up because I thought it was going to be similar to one of the other octopus books that I read that I really liked, but this one was a little bit too science focused to keep my interest. I'm sure it's a good book. I just don't think it's for me. And the last book that I did not finish this year was How to Solve Your Own Murder. This is by Kristen Piran. This is a mystery, and I stopped reading this 40% of the way through. I was really excited to read this, but I felt like I was pushing myself to read it, and I don't want to push myself through a book unless I have to. So I just stopped because I couldn't get into it. It felt really flat for me. And that is it. That is all the books that I read and did not read in 2025. My favorite book was definitely The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, for sure. And with that, that's all I have for you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for making it to the end. If you did, I appreciate you. Maybe like something, maybe subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye! I do understand a lot of the controversy. I just like saying Hague. Hague. The esteemed. I fucking dyslexia.